We see two narratives dominating the politics of migration. The one is I call it the mass immigration fear-mongering narrative. So whenever there is an increase in cross-border migration, we see politicians claiming that this is the new waves to come and we can expect hundreds of millions of Africans to come to Europe. And it creates this whole climate of, this is just a trickle for the waves to come. The other one is, of course, the classic allegation towards immigrants that they take away jobs, healthcare, public housing, and so on and so forth. And that's sort of certainly in Northwestern Europe and also in the UK leads to a narrative about immigration is undermining the welfare state. I think these are perfect strategies for politicians to basically create a smokescreen and take the attention away from the real causes of migration. And the real main direct cause of migration is quite simply labor demand. I mean, if you look at the history of immigration, both to the US and in Europe, it all started with recruitment of migrant workers. If you go back to the 1950s, 60s, 70s, that recruitment took place initially in Southern Europe, later in North Africa and Turkey, if we take a European perspective. But once, of course, people started migrating, networks kicked in, family members helped each other, and the migration flow sort of perpetuated itself. But most migrations have started with some form of recruitment. Now, these days, recruitment takes place more informally. It no longer goes through an agreement signed, let's say, between Germany and Turkey, or between France and Morocco. It now is often happening through the so-called free labor market. We see all the employment agencies playing a very big role in recruiting all sorts of labor from inside and outside the European Union. So we see a very close relation between levels of economic growth, employment, and immigration. So if the economy tanks, migration goes down. If the economy goes up, immigration goes up. And of course, a lot of family members follow economic migrants. So by and large, this is an economic phenomenon. And there's a huge level of hypocrisy in this. If you go to the United States, the level of enforcement, and what I mean with enforcement is actually the chance of an employer being controlled whether there is a migrant worker working for that employer, let's say in agriculture, without having the proper permits is extremely low. Also, if you go to the UK and many European countries, actually, these are fairly low risks employers take. So even for undocumented migration, we see there is a large willingness amongst government to turn a blind eye towards those practices. But as I said, the big majority of these migrations are perfectly legal immigrations facilitated through all sorts of entry channels for both higher and lower skilled workers, for which a clear need exists. And that comes to another issue, is that more and more, although the official story is about we want the smart and bright and wealthy immigrants, that there are a lot of sectors in Western economies where the jobs that need to be done, we can no longer find local workers to do these jobs. We typically talk about agriculture, about construction, cleaning,
healthcare.
And the COVID-19 crisis, I think, made perfectly clear that a lot of this work in what we now have called the vital sectors are migrant workers. Yeah. And these are typically the type of jobs that native workers no longer want to pick up, and for which only migrant workers are often available. And that is a very important cause of the continuation of immigration, also of lower skilled immigrants, because the official narrative, the politicians want to tell the story that, we want the engineers and the doctors, but we don't need the cleaners and the fruit pickers and agriculture construction workers. The problem is that the labor demand is still there, and we have very complex labor markets, but also a native population that is rather unemployed and to do those type of jobs.